Hello everyone, so the new Model Rail magazine has just arrived. It's number 325 for May 2024, and this one is called For the Fun of It. And we're going to have a look and see what is in this issue of the magazine this month. On the cover we seem to have a Class 20 and some wagons, including this one, which I think is a track cleaner, but it's a strange one to have on the cover of a magazine. And it looks like we have some Class 48s down here in detail and some reviews of some new items. So let's get into this and have a look and see what we've got. So the usual welcome from George Dent. He seems to have got rid of his flat cap from last month, which is a bit of a shame. And he is one of the hardest working people in model railways, so we're bound to see a lot of stuff that he's done this month. So his editorial is talking about the new Helgen Class 47 and his memories of Class 47s in his past. But he's also talking here about conversions of older models, including the Lima models. So that's going to be quite interesting, I think, what we're going to get inside this magazine. So let's continue on. So opening the box is a double page spread of a steam era model railway. And it looks very good, I think. And it has a coal train up here and it's talking about the Forest of Dean industrial past. It looks really quite interesting. So the news here, it is all about, on this page, the new Hornby TT120 releases. I did like these Euro container flat car wagons here, but then later on I found out that these are actually Lionel models which have been rebadged as Hornby. So I thought that was good of Hornby to do these, but now I'm just thinking they're recycling again. It continues over on this page, but then we've got down here about the Dapple Class 59 arrives, which is quite interesting in N gauge, and we've got these new wagons. And in the corner here, we've got a bit about Dapple marks D-Day milestone with this wagon here. This is stuff I don't really like, this kind of gimmicky marking some anniversary with a wagon, which has got nothing to do with it. So on this page we have some news about the Rapido fireless steam locomotive, the Guy Fawkes Special number 31. I actually saw this model in Model Rail Scotland, the prototype of it anyway, and it looked pretty good, and it's somewhat different as well. And it's also talking here about Rapido's expansion of the 7-plank wagon with some more liveries as well. And down here it's talking about Rapido's inspired by Titfield Thunderbolt wagons. TMC is expanded with some more staff, it looks like. Over on this page we've got some details about Helgen's Class 37. That would be an interesting addition to the model range for 37s, but I do think it's really saturated now. I think we've probably got enough of these. This one looks quite interesting from the Irish Railway models. It's an 11-ton fuel oil tanker built around the Oliver Bulleys versatile triangulated chassis, so that's quite interesting. And it's good to see tankers which aren't TTAs, because I think there's far too many of them. Quite expensive though, at £90 per triple pack, so £30 a wagon. That's quite a lot of money, but still good to see that they're there. Got Revolution's Class 59 and N gauge coming in, and we've got a Bluetooth wireless controller for analog layouts. That sounds pretty interesting. I might check that out at some point. And it's got some information here about Hattons being rescued by rails. Well, kind of. That's been all over the internet already. And down here we've got about Accurascale's new banana wagons, and they call it Bananarama, which is quite funny. £85 for 3 small wagons, so it's quite a lot of money, but I think they would be really detailed, so it's quite interesting to have a look at those if I can get my hands on them. Over here it's talking about George Dent having visited a model railway exhibition. It's the Modern Image O-Gauge Group annual model railway show. Looks quite interesting. O-Gauge is certainly a scale that has expanded a lot in my lifetime, and it's quite interesting to see that they've got their own show now as well. These pages are always quite interesting with the smaller details. I do like these little accessories you can get here. These ones from Model Scene. There's some books as well. Not really interested in that. I find out all my information online these days. And we've got some tools here that George has been playing with this month. Some N-gauge little figures here. And Model Lou as well has been busy with a 3D printer. Some really good workshop stuff here, including a figure there and a crew there for the Class 20. And we have a small chapel here available from Scale Scenes, which does look really good as well. I often think that their stuff is actually quite detailed and quite interesting to have a look at. Only $5.99 for that as well, it's quite good. And the unusual scenes here looks as though it's a car being loaded onto a flat wagon. I've seen more unusual things than that there. Okay, now we've got some news about real railways. Not so interested in that, I'm going to skip over that. And now we've got the staff show and tell. This is usually George Dent's tour de force, where he just shows everything he's been doing and he puts us all to shame with the amount of stuff he actually gets done. So he's talking here about needing a little shunting locomotive for a small layout that he's producing. I'd maybe recommend having a look on eBay at some of the 3D printed shunters that you can get that look quite interesting. It also shows that George Dent does actually get away from his computer and his modelling bench, because he went for a walk and he saw this and he thought that was quite inspiring. Now Dave Lowry puts in an appearance here talking about his Mark III coaches that he's modifying, and you can see some kits here and some decals that he's been doing. And we've got Peter Marriott talking about recycling a baseboard and making a new layout, which is always a great idea. Okay, now we come to Ben Ando, the founder of Revolution Trains, and he's always got some things to say. So he's actually talking about rivet counters, and he being one, because he is a manufacturer, he has to get these details right, but he's talking about criticism that people lay on other people. And he also mentions here about Rule 1, which these kind of subjects have been talked about on other YouTube channels recently, and I tend to agree with it, that if it's your model railway layout, then do what you want with it, I think. A manufacturer has to be really careful, so that's obvious, but he does conclude by saying that you should learn from people rather than just take offence. We've now got the cover star, The Art of Compromise. This is a year 2000s layout which Paul Roberts has done, so it's featuring his layout. Had to have some compromises to fit it into his available space. Isn't that something that happens to us all, I think? So this is a 00 layout, modern image. It's got some really good models running here and some really good buildings as well. Not so keen on the track work, I think that could have been a little bit better, but it's not too bad at all. I do actually like the crowds of people as well, often overlooked on model railways. You need a lot of people. It does look really convincing overall, and I think he's done a really good job here. Obviously the key thing with modern image is long trains, and if you've got limited space that can be a problem, but I can see that he's done a lot with an engine shed here, and that's a great way of just having some locomotives and maybe 1 or 2 wagons and having a lot of fun there. So he's done some good weathering on this class 37 here, and I can see he's running passenger services as well. These single car DMUs are great for the small layouts and running passenger services, and even here he's got an NCP car park, so that's very modern. But I do like these older touches like this one here. It's a very traditional English pub with the bunting out and the Sky Sports on the telly. So here is the man himself, Paul Roberts, and he's looking pretty happy with himself, and no wonder. This is a really good looking layout, and you can see the track plan here. It's not very big at all, 21 foot, not that big when it comes to modern image layouts. So he's packed in a lot into that small space. And now we come to this story about the Class 48, and we get these stories quite regularly in this magazine. And this Class 48, even though there weren't that many, but it seems to have been photographed quite a lot, and they've got a lot of them here. And as usual, it follows up with what you can do to model this class of locomotive. So here we have a brush up your 48. George Dent's on the case again, and he's got a model here which he's going to improve on. So he's got various versions of it down here in weather, condition and factory, and it looks as though he goes to town sorting out the front buffer beam and the interior and adding some characters, the 2 engineers sitting there. Now we come on to workbench, where George shows us everything else he's been doing. This looks really interesting, I think. It's a plastic kit. Chris Nevard is doing this one, and it looks really quite good actually. It's got a lot of character in this building. It's not just your usual 4 square walls, by ratio as well. I don't think that's going to be that expensive. I might actually attempt to do this one day myself. And he shows how he's made this model using some Halford paint and some dry brushing, and it's come out really good. That is an impressive little model. And now we've got Peter Marriott talking about his little water scene. He did something about this last month, so I'm just guessing he's progressing it a bit further here with some more water effects. So George mentioned in his editorial about these Lima models, and what he's done here is given them a new lease of life with a coreless motor. So this apparently is a new product that's come to market. Now, I normally don't have so many problems with these, especially in older Lemur ones. If you keep them clean and well serviced, they seem to work pretty good. So he goes into detail about how he cleans up this model and puts in the new motor. It looks like he's put it into this electric locomotive and this DMU, and it looks pretty good and it fits perfectly as well. I guess there's a little bit of soldering to be done. So this is great to keep old Lemur models running. So now we've got this layout by Kevin Smith, the Wolds Wanderer. And it looks like a steam layout in the British Railways era, and it looks like quite a tight curve there, so maybe he's had some space problems as well. It does have pretty plain grass, I have to admit, and also the station is pretty plain as well. If this is my layout, I'd be doing a lot more weathering on it, but you know, everybody's got their own preference. It does look as though he's done a little bit of work onto his locomotives, but for end gauge this is actually looking really good. Especially like the buildings that he's created here, those look really nice. And he's done pretty well with this locomotive here. Now, end gauge isn't a scale I particularly like, and I can see some limitations down here on the wheels and how they look. But if you're an end gauge modeler, this is certainly inspiring for you, I would think. And this is definitely a good part of the layout where he's got this little quarry going on. And here is the plan of the layout in 6'6" by 2 foot. What I like about this is it isn't just packed all with track, and he's left the scenery space to breathe, which I think is really good. Okay, now we come on to the reviews, and I always like this section of this magazine. So we start off with the Helgen Class 47. Now it's not like we don't have enough 47 models in the world, so is this one going to really stack up? It is £250 or £390 with DCC sound, which is very expensive, but it does look really quite impressive. And as normal, we have a little fact file about the 47 and a summary box up here. And it says there is minor shape issues as one of the cons, although it's got excellent level of detail and impressive specification and superb performance and lighting effects. But I think for a model that can come in at almost £400, I think the minor shape issues shouldn't be there at all. So possibly this isn't the best Class 47 that you can possibly buy, but you've certainly got lots of options. Next we have the N-Gauge Farish LMS 10,000. And it looks an okay model. Now, I've already said N-Gauge isn't my gauge because I think it's just a little bit too crude. But this one certainly looks quite interesting. So over here, it's a fact file of these, just 2 locomotives, and they represent the first of the diesel-electric traction on the main line railways. So quite a limited appeal of this locomotive, but certainly Farish seem to have done not a bad job here. One of the things I really hate in this magazine is when they say this about cons, not a lot, and I never know what that means. Does that mean it has some or it doesn't have some? I don't really know. Just say what the cons are, not a lot. But the pros certainly say it looks the part, crisply moulded detail, high quality finish and a smooth performance. So here we have the 00 Works LMY Class 27060 steam locomotive in the LMS livery. It comes in at a price of £325. I've not heard of the 00 Works before, but they've certainly done a real good job on this locomotive. The detail looks really good, and you can see some of the things up here in these smaller pictures, especially the detail and painted cab interior. That looks very impressive. Down here though, we've got some cons including simplified brake gear and lack of DCC provision, but the pros are that it captures the look of the prototype well. It's got a good level of detail and impressive build quality and a smooth runner. So it does look like a good release, and if you're interested in this particular locomotive, this is definitely worth checking out. Now we come on to this Bachmann 70 horsepower little shunter. I did see this in their release video at the start of the year and I did roast the hell out of it. I do like the camel on the side of it. I think that's really quite cool. But this seems to be a really dull looking locomotive, and I've seen much better shunters 3D printed and available on eBay. I don't like things like where the chevrons don't match in with the grille that well, and some of the details up on the top here look a bit plastic. That almost looks like Lego. Again, cons, not a lot. I wish they would stop doing that. But I'm not a big fan of this locomotive. It is just under £120. Not too bad for a new locomotive, but not for me. Now we come on to this model, which is the Helgen Class 57. This is coming in at just under £180. I do like the colour scheme on this. It looks very interesting. But even on this model, it does seem to have some problems here where it looks a bit fuzzy around the edges. So I don't think the masking is that good on this one. So over here, we've got the pros, excellent performance, top-notch finish. Well, I'm not so sure that is top-notch finish. And welcome DCC lighting and mechanical upgrades, with the cons: a body slightly too wide, a lack of finer etched details. So the final verdict is still a good model, especially in terms of finish and performance, and that hints that this is just a re-release of its 57 in the original state and with some slight internal upgrades, so it's not really that much of an improvement over the old one apparently. So now we come on to the Accurascale Mark IIB coaches in various liveries. You can see the Network Southeast and the blue and grey there as well. And previously these were available from Lima, but that was way back in 1977, so this has been upgraded to modern day standards, and it's certainly a massive step forward if you're into these Mark II coaches. So the pros are obviously the looks and fidelity. You'd expect that with Accurascale. Top-notch finish, smooth runners, lighting system and useful prototype. But the cons saying a few loose parts, but that could just be because of the fine details on those parts. For example, the handrails on the side of the coach there on this one, you can see are really fine. I certainly think these are probably the best Mark IIs that you could get. So now we come on to a selection of Rapido trains, wagons, and they're all of the same kind of era. It seems to imply that the prices are $32.95 each, which is quite a lot of money for these small four-wheeled wagons, but they do pack in a lot of detail, and the crispness of the moulding here does look really good on all of these wagons. So the pros are fine detail and impressive build quality, detailed variations catered for and superb quality of finish, and the cons are long couplers, which is quite noticeable on these. So some releases from Hornby here, it's the TTA tank wagons for the TT 120 scale. I'm not a big fan of these tank wagons in general, but these ones do look quite good. The underframe has got a lot of detail. The cons, not a lot. Again, I wish you'd stop doing that. George, are you listening? So the pros that they're calling out here are the looks and fidelity, the impressive level of detail, top-notch finish, and that they're smooth runners. Easily Hornby's best TT 120 wagon so far. Yeah, but they haven't done a lot of TT 120 wagons, so there's not much to compare it against. But they certainly look quite good if you're into TTA tank wagons. So interestingly, when we saw the Mark IIs on the previous page, we've now got Hornby releasing this train pack with their Mark IIs. I think this would probably show that these Mark IIs aren't quite so good, but then it comes in at a different price point. This train pack comes in at $299.99 and it has this attractive EWS livery in the maroon colour with a grey roof, and the locomotive, the Class 67, sitting looks really good in the maroon and yellow. That's very impressive locomotive colour scheme. So they are calling out in the pros that it has attractive livery. The Class 67 looks great and runs beautifully, and it's decent value, and it's got magnetic couplers. The cons, a few drooping couplers on the Mark IIs, which is a bit strange, but fair enough. And it says a useful train pack for the EWS era, and Hornby are well known for doing train packs like this. So lots of adverts there as usual. And then we come on to present your case. This one is the Class 100 2-car DMU. Now, I think that would be a very useful model to have, especially on smaller layouts. And on the final page, we've got Chris Lee. Now, he usually rants about something, and really is just talking about the fate of one of these HO scale layouts, which looks as though it's going to be disposed of and maybe the parts recycled. Bit of a shame when that happens. A lot of work goes into layouts and then sometimes they end up just getting binned. I've had to do that myself a couple of times in the past. And finally down here it's just talking about a record that has appeared at the Triang, apparently produced back in the 1970s. So it's not unusual to hear of records and other recordings of locomotives from back then, but it's certainly got interesting artwork on this one here. And that's your May 2024 Model Rail magazine. As usual, George Dent hasn't taken a holiday and he's been very busy and putting us all to shame with the amount of stuff he actually gets done in a month. Quite an interesting magazine. I don't think it's necessarily the best. There wasn't a lot of interesting information in it for me. I did like the ratio timber merchant kit. I think I might actually give that a go. And also the information about upgrading old Ringfield motors with a coreless one. That's going to save a lot of modelers like myself who have got such a range of old and tatty locomotives that probably could benefit from those kind of upgrades. Anyway, that's the magazine. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps this channel. And on screen in a moment, I'll put a link to another video. Just click on that and I'll see you there. But that's it for Model Rail this month. I'll be back next month with the June one. So until then, keep modeling. See ya.